Hi, I'm Mark Goodliffe, and you're very welcome to Cracking the Cryptic, our series of vlogs about cryptic crosswords, and where we try to explain some of the principles behind them, help people improve at crossword solving, and to understand it sometimes in the first instance. And probably that's what we'll look at today. As you join me, it's Monday the 6th of November, and this weekend was the Times Crossword Championship for this year. And I was lucky enough to win it for the 10th time in a row, 11th overall. I'm very grateful to those people who've congratulated me. I congratulate everybody who turned up to the event, and especially those 24 who got in the final. It was some fairly tricky crosswords. I was certainly very happy to get them done in just over 20 minutes for the 3 puzzles, which I know to some people sounds ridiculous. It meant they were slightly harder than normal puzzles on average for me. And I'm about to show you my solve of today's Times crossword puzzle, which is, as I recorded it as it was happening. I'm just going to start it off now. I'd spent about 10 seconds resizing the window there before I really started looking at the clues, which began now. So it took quite a while to find any clue I could start with. And although probably we'll see one going in at about the 45-second mark, which is some 30 seconds after I began, I probably had read or glanced at 6 or 7 clues by then. That's how fast I moved through. And it's interesting, the one I started with, a big anagram, 10 down. Series of talks from heretic result in chaos is the clue, as you can see. Heretic result is the letters that we need there, and the way that the clue is phrased, it says in chaos after them. So what you have to do is consider the letters of heretic result in chaos, not making those words anymore, heretic result, but chaotically making something else. And that something else was defined as a series of talks, and after a few moments, I realized there was a very good chance that the word lectures was the 8-letter part of the answer. The enumeration gives it as 5-8. And once I took out lectures, I could see that the other letters from that anagram, from heretic result, did give wreath, as in the famous Wreath lectures, originally sponsored by the inaugurator of the BBC, Lord Wreath. How famous are the Wreath lectures? I don't know. I've heard of them. I've never listened to a Wreath lecture. I don't know if I can. Maybe they're on TV. They probably are, given the source of the inspiration for them. But at least I have heard of them as a series of talks. I'm not sure what other series of talks I have ever heard of. Maybe TED Talks or Royal Commonwealth Institute lectures or something, but that's about it. So once I'd got my mind on that, that was reasonably sensible in terms of somewhere to go. I'm going to spend quite a lot of time looking at 21 across, 5 letters ending in T. And the clue is Rose suddenly turned pale and finally wept, which reads as though it's about a girl having an emotional moment. Rose suddenly turned pale and finally wept. Now, I barely noticed what that surface seemed to mean when I was solving. Probably I didn't, in fact. And what I focused on was the fact that the first 2 words of the clue, rose suddenly, looked like a definition for jumped up quickly or was startled or awoke, something like that. And I couldn't solve it immediately, but finally wept suggested the T from wept, because it's the final part of wept. So finally wept gave me a T. And eventually, with some more letters in the grid, I realized that turned pale was giving me an anagram of pale before the T. So the whole clue works as a definition, rose suddenly, which is leapt. And then the wordplay is turned pale, So an anagram of pale, and finally wept. That's the T. And that's how crossword clues pretty much always work. There's a definition at one end of the clue or other, and the rest of the clue is wordplay to assemble the answer. Certainly, one would expect to take a bit longer than you're seeing me take here over some of the answers. But the other thing that's worth pointing out is, well, we've seen Reith lectures. I don't think there's much sort of recondite or obscure knowledge in this puzzle apart from that, if one could consider it that. You need to perhaps know that Minerva was a Greek goddess, that flambe is a French way of preparing food where it's briefly lit up. Bespoken was a slightly older word, but really those are in most adults' vocabularies at least. And 6 down, which I come to here, the last long one in the puzzle. Revolutionary act well before the Boston Tea Party. And it's a bit of a strange one. It is gunpowder plot, and that works reasonably well, even assuming that the clue was a kind of a straight definition of a revolutionary act that happened well before the Boston Tea Party. But the point to bear in mind there is that gunpowder is the name for a type of tea. If you didn't know that, you could probably still solve the clue, but if you did know that, it clues you in much quicker to what's going on in the clue. And 7 down here is quite a neat one. A Guernsey detective cut off sharpish. The definition is sharpish, 6-letter word beginning with A and then ending in I something. And why it says a Guernsey detective is because what you have to come up with is a Channel Islands Dick, D-I-C-K, is a detective, and that's cut off. So what you get is A-C-I-D-I-C, spelling out acidic, which means sharpish, not in what appeared to be the clue sense of happening quickly, but in the taste sense. And therefore, the whole puzzle was done, the time recorded is 6 minutes, 12 seconds, which is just about my average time. I suppose it may have been a fraction easier than the average, given that I spent a few seconds at the beginning sizing the grid and so on. An interesting puzzle, some clues there that I think anybody could understand as long as somebody's pointed them towards the right understanding of how crosswords appear. And I think an enjoyable puzzle, as they always are, as I was quoted as saying, there's always a buzz from solving every clue. And I do earnestly advise you to get into crosswords if you haven't, or get more into them if you have, because they really provide a very good way of stretching the brain a bit and spending some very pleasurable time. So thank you very much for watching. I hope to see you again on Cracking the Cryptic at some point, and see you soon. Bye.